stay. Otherwise, I end up just being the only fucker that's. I think we're live.
I can stay like this. I'm not going to be on the screen.
Oh no, you will be on the screen.
Okay, I'll.
Don't mind
I'll
your
put
face being on the screen.
Yeah, I'll fix it.
Your face is currently on the screen.
I know.
Oh
Let's
shit!
see, Okay, I did it.
Ah, you bastard. Let's make sure I'm the right account as well. So yeah, evening all to everybody who's joined us. Welcome to episode 42 of season 5 of the Operation Grow Show. General shit talking episode about whatever we can think of. Hey, why not? So yeah, actually, you pick up where we were just discussing around genetic diversity or lack thereof, or where were we, Magma?
Yeah, and then we were talking about how you can see, like, on certain cultivars, you can see the lineage, and then when you taste the herb, like you can experience something different than what you're being told. So, like I was saying, I think like back in the days, the Jack Herer used to be really prominent for that. Like a lot of strains would carry the Jack in it without necessarily being said, and you would know that when you smoked it. And I think that later on changed to the OG becoming like more dominant in the background of a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, a lot of seed banks don't really have a benefit saying that that's what they used to work with. So many times there would be like these imaginary strains that are the so-called lineage.
Well, no, exactly. I mean, and actually, that's a good point. I mean, you mentioned like seed bank. Oddly enough, I think that's an interesting thing there. Like, it's not so much seed bank as breeder these days. I think in the old days, it was almost like the seed banks were working with certain strains. But now it's just the seed banks themselves are just that. They're just seed banks. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like there's something, sometimes you'll grow something, for instance, and I mean, there is that Amsterdam coffee shop weed smell. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it has that, there's like a hashy kind of Amsterdam coffee shop smell that when you smoke something, you go, that's it. And I've only found that in Europe. Not that I've been spending that much time in the US, but I've not experienced it anywhere else other than in Europe. That kind of, yeah, as soon as you spark it, you're like, oh, that's it. That's a coffee shop joint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that could be like a combination of how they grow it, like amendments used in flowering.
Yeah.
And also it could be like one generic strain being named under many names, just like what's hot at the moment. So
I think it's got a lot to do, you know, the mystery grower groups. There's a lot of like Afghan in the. I mean, that's my theory anyway. There's a lot of Afghan in the lineage because you smoke some like pure Afghan, and that straight away gives you that coffee shop smell. It's like it's a hash. That's the weird thing. It's a hash smell from smoking a joint. It's got that instant kind of like over here. I would equate it to being like pollen, or what we would call pollen back in the day.
Yeah. The lightly pressed bricks, no?
Yeah, you know the stuff you hit with a lighter and it just went it didn't bubble up, it fluffed up. It went into this puffy sort of fluff stuff. So pollen, yeah. And that when you smoke those Afghan strains, that's what I get. I mean, to me, like the cross that the mystery grower did with a number of things with the Durban poison. And then crossing it with an Afghan, all the Durban poison disappeared all of a sudden in the last cross. It just smells and tastes like good coffee shop hash. I actually think it would make a really good hash line if they did it like that. In fact, if you happen to be in Europe and you pop over to simpleseedcode.com and look at number 1, that's exactly what you'll get. Shameless plug. And hello to everybody in chat. Hope you're all doing well. Hey, Lefty, how's you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Kind of recuperating. I had a quick fly out to the West Coast on Thursday. Took the red eye back home. I was there for like 5 hours, flew back home.
5 hours? Jesus.
Yeah, I went and picked up a dog.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I flew out. Yeah, I left the East Coast at 2, got to the West Coast at 5:30 their time. Hopped 11 o'clock flight their time, got back at like 6 o'clock my time, drove 2 hours home.
Jesus, man.
Yeah, but it was fun. He's a fun little dude. Should be interesting few next few months.
Looks cute. Looks pretty cute, I must say. Not that I'm a dog person, I'm a cat person. So
Yeah, I think I'm gonna start doing some breeding.
okay.
So
A little more dramatic than when breeding with plants, because when you hit hard recessives in mammals, it tends to really fuck up. Yeah, they're looking.
yeah.
Check it out, the 6-eyed lefty.
What breed is it?
It's a French bulldog, little Frenchies.
So it's already a little gifted on the
I got 4.
genetics field.
I got 4 French bulldogs.
They're
Oh,
awesome,
yeah.
aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Sorry.
fun. I think he's 12. He's 12 weeks old. But yeah, it's a ball of energy for about 2 hours, and he passes out for 2 hours. And then he's a ball of energy for 2 hours, and he passes out for 2 hours. So he's fun. He's fun. We're enjoying it so far.
Nice.
But yeah, otherwise everything's good. I did get some pictures up on my Instagram yesterday of the Wooderson. So if you want to take a peek at those at some point, we can do that. I did get around to doing that this week. But yeah, otherwise everything's looking really good. Gave him a few foliar apps in the last, I don't know, 8 days or so. Two foliar apps last 8 days. Just some dragonfly earth medicine stuff. But yeah, they're doing really good. I'm planning on flipping them probably the end of next week, which is somewhere around like 41, 42 days, something like that.
From seed.
Yeah, from above ground. Yep.
And is that the sorry, that's the
banana Ogia rice.
okay, cool. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah,
I must actually have a look, because as I was just discussing, Magma and I were having this discussion before the show started. Now having pulled in the EU Seed Finder database and then tracing through, what's it? Medical genomics, medical genomics. I think they call themselves medical genomics, which is like similar to Phylos, medicinal genomics. Through them, I discovered a link to some scientific gov.gov database that has all these genome sequences of these different strains, and they've got the Phylos ones all listed there. They've got this crowd, well, another company, I think it's a Dutch company or Spanish company. And then I did another search and discovered there's over 8,000 strains, genomes, sequenced, publicly available on public database. So I've started pulling that in. And then what becomes really interesting is to look at what does EU Seed Finder, for example, say, okay, this is the lineage, and then you take a look at the genomes, so long as they've got them for those particular ones. Maybe I can link up and say, just show me ones where you actually have the genetics, everything has a genome mapped, and they're in line with each other, if that makes sense. and then start to compare how similar is the last one in the line to the first two in the line. And that's become quite interesting. I found like there's a couple where two that are really closely genetically related shown no, at least comparing them to ESeed Finder, they have no close heritage at all. I mean, they're like miles apart in terms of heritage, but genetically are, at least in the first 100,000, 250,000 base pairs, are the closest out of everything, out of another 163 of them that I've compared so far. And that was quite interesting. Like, okay. And then there's one of them that stands out in the crowd so far, which is this Romulan strain. And it stands out in that it is the most distant from everything else. If you could, I would say, if you're wanting to breed, if you can get hold of a genuine article Romulan cut, and you'd want to cut
that's
off
the problem. I think that's really
what is
difficult.
Romulan. Yeah, that's going to be the
Because
catch.
there is a guy that says he has the Romulan. But
Well, you can check it. I mean, you could
curious.
actually pay. You could pay 400. Like, if the guy who's got Romulan, the genuine article, wanted to sell it to you, you could do like, all right, well, send me a sample. I'm going to get it validated. It's going to cost $400 to get it validated. And if it comes back 1-for-1 or at least 90+% accurate on that's the same thing, then I'll pay you for the cut. Otherwise, you pay for the. I mean, that's what you want. You want somebody to be able to go, here we go. Here's the lineage, how it's paid for. Take the damn thing. And that's when it'll be worth paying that money.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that's actually the NFT that's worth it. To be honest, I own the NFT that gives me the right to sell you this and validate it as being what it is.
And that would almost be like the whole genetic sequence. So that way you could compare the stuff in the future, and you'd have like the genetic sequence as a digital token that you could go look back, and you could be like, okay, I can actually trace this,
Yeah, well, that's just it. I mean, because you know what gene it is that they've sequenced, because that's all they've done, from what I understand. They've taken one gene and sequenced one whole gene, and then they use that as the comparison. And they're all sequencing the same one. The difference is some of them have sequenced a certain number of base pairs, and they've gone out further than others. And I'm trying to find where the sweet spot is in terms of, I mean, dude, it's like up to 1 billion base pairs, and I'm only comparing 250,000. But I want to figure out, like, how much of it do you have to compare to get there? Is there a difference between 250,000 and if I compared 5 million? How much does that change? Yeah, how much does that change the actual result set? Because is it the first 250 or 500,000 base pairs are a bang on match? Well, then you've got a bang on match. So it does become interesting. I mean, I think from a breeder's perspective, it becomes very interesting to start to drill the data that way, to go, show me shit that's distant, show me shit that changes stuff, that where when that thing got introduced, everything suddenly shifted in like flowering changed by 50%. That being able to ask it the question, show me everything that changed, where flowering times reduced by 20% over the whole lineage. And in some of it does it in 2 steps, and some of it does it in 50 steps. But there's something along the way that kicks in and just goes clunk, and it changes. And you go, all right, well, that's what I want. That's the bit I want to grab and go, let me get one of those and use it for shortened flowering time. And then you find ones where you go, I want to see things where the THC has gone up by 30% or 10%, whatever it is, over the duration. And when you look at the lineage and go track, oh, there we go, it spikes at this point. grab the thing that got introduced there that spiked it. And I swear we can do it now pretty much with very directed breeding if we know how to ask the right questions of the data that's available.
Yeah,
Based
so
on
I
what,
guess all of these tests are from
Mhm.
females. So I guess the interesting thing would be to find like what males from these lines and what results they can produce based on like how similar or how far away they are.
Mm, mm, mm. Hey Raptor, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, pretty good. Sorry I was late. I was just top dressing the plants, giving them some water. Actually applied some product called TM7 by BioAg. It's just 40% humic acids and then just trace minerals, boron, iron, manganese, stuff like that. Yeah, looking forward to it. I don't think I must have at least applied it once because the seal was broken. So this is like the second time I've applied it. But yeah, before that, I was just using some recharge. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to just keep giving them that. I have the original bag that I got from I've gone to the hydro store twice. Once for that, and then once for a carbon filter. So that's all I've ever picked up from there. But yeah, not much.
Nice.
Just glad to be jumping in.
Yeah, cool.
I've actually
talking
seen
about
people
base
recharge
pairs.
the soil with like food scraps in the blender.
Okay. Yeah, that
Mix
would
with
work, I
water,
guess.
and they just use that like a live nutrient, almost, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it has soluble kelp, soluble seaweed. So I could see
Yeah,
it.
that's really nice.
Yeah. And I guess it's being sold in Canada now. So as far as I see, that's basically organic. And then because Canada doesn't let a lot of stuff in, and especially for ag grade. So it's nice. I like it. I just don't, I'm trying not to rely on it, and I'm trying to rely on me building my own biology. And I'm actually looking more into just making my own compost. So Magma, you're actually a really good person to ask about this. Are you familiar with the Johnson Sioux bioreactor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you tried it or any of the forms?
No, I haven't.
You just looked into it?
Yeah, no, I looked into a bunch of different compost ways to do it, and I really liked the Sean Payne technique, and just regular old like thermal compost in a pile with some water.
Yeah,
I'm really into like old school composting where you just use like time and you just leave a pile. Like they did in the communities back in the days,
yeah,
many
static.
places they had like a waste, garden waste.
Yeah, I was looking more into the Johnson Sioux just because you get more aeration and you're not tearing through the biology.
But
Like
yeah,
you
it's more
said,
more
yours is
efficient.
static. You leave it. I kind of want it to be in between where it's getting the air that it would be from the aeration when you're turning it.
Yeah.
But you're also getting the benefits of it being static, so you're not tearing apart any mycelium that's going through. It's more of a method to promote more fungal communities.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to be looking into that, and then just combining that with worm castings. What I'm going to be doing is just taking a 35-gallon trash bin, drilling holes on the side, drilling more holes on the bottom, and putting in the middle just some corrugated pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like slightly the one that I saw.
Yeah, that
in my
looks
home
like the
improvement
easiest
truck.
one when you put it in the middle, just like pipe.
Yeah, just that. just one, and then it's never more than 6 inches to a foot away from air.
Yeah.
So I'll let you know. I'll have to look into the method you were talking
Wait, this
about.
is a what now?
It's just for composting. You know, it's a
Okay.
no-turn compost
Okay.
composter. So you just
Sorry.
take a bin. Yeah, you're fine. Just a cylindrical bin, whatever container. You could use a 5 gallon. I guess if you really want to scale it down even more to something you could throw in your garage or in your room for whatever
Mhm.
reason. And yeah, you're just keeping whatever organic matter you put within there is never that far away from aeration, from some air flow going through. Of course, you got to put water in there. It's going to dry out, but you just check up on it. But the organic matter that you're inputting should have its own water as well. So just be aware of that. It's going to dehydrate, then just water it, use the best kind of water you can. And that's what I like about it. From 6 months to a year, you can have something that Magma might say is more finished. Like what would take Magma with that method a year, I could probably do within 6 months to 9 months.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Depending on, depending on my environment, how hot it is, how moist it is. You know, if I was doing it in the winter, my winter is not a real winter. It's like everyone else's spring or like late summer,
Yeah.
or sorry, late spring.
I think
Yeah.
the benefit with the pile with the compost is that you can also create a bunch of heat that you can
Yeah.
collect. If you collect, like if you connect a water pipe and you run like
Mhm.
a spiral plastic tube PVC in there,
I
you
completely
can
agree.
have like hot water continuous for a long time. So
Yeah,
it has
that's
like
a good point. I
multiple
mean, you could
benefits.
use your compost pile to
To heat
warm
your
your.
greenhouse.
Greenhouse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I've seen that
'Cause they
method
get
done.
quite warm as well. I mean,
Yeah,
some
they
of those
do.
Oh, yeah.
compost
You can
piles
get it
get
up to 165. I mean, the ideal range is 160 degrees to, if you want to completely wipe out all your seeds, if you got some organic matter that's a little dicey and you like it, maybe it even smells a little bit, there's some extra stuff going on there. Take care of those possible pathogens, anaerobic conditions. I mean, anything that you might have gotten that's like, I would never put this on my plants. Let it go through that cycle. I would say 14 days. Some people say 3 days. It really depends on what you're trying to do and what you're using it for. Ornamental, sure, do less. But for the purposes of what we're doing, let it go longer. What do I have to lose? This is an even more accelerated method. I believe it's the Berkeley method, composting. Yeah, where you just turn it, and that's the fastest way to get composts. But that's also the most work. So I like the Johnson Sioux. It's right in the middle. But I'm also not putting in seeded material. I want to have 2 piles. I want to have the one that's just static where I'd be putting that stuff. But I also have weeds. I have stuff that I wouldn't put in that pile because it has seeds.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to, that's exactly what they tell you to throw into the green bin over here. Like, I don't want to throw that out. That's perfectly good organic matter. That's perfectly good carbon. That's perfectly good
Yeah, or you
cellulose.
can put like a cardboard layer between your mulch also. And
That's true as well. I would like to cut out them even having the possibility of germinating at all.
oh yeah,
But the cardboard method, hey, if they don't have light, if they don't have air, as much air, you know, in those ideal conditions for them to be pop, like to sprout, there you go. You just took care of it. So there's multiple ways to go about this, and that's what we should all understand. And there's no one right way. There's some ways that fit a lot better for certain people in certain conditions. I don't have a lot
I
of
know.
time.
I think it's like when you move grow
Yeah.
room. If you move from one grow room to another one, you know, the room can look the same, and the size can be the same, but you're gonna have to apply new solutions because there's gonna be temperature differences and how the sun is located. There's like always something small that makes a big difference.
Yeah. But that's just what I've been working on. I know that, our friend Remo, he actually made one of those, what I was talking about, what I was talking about with the Johnson Sioux bioreactor. That's way more scaled up. It's for a it's a lot larger, but what I was talking about with the bin, that's just a smaller scale. I really like it because the guy's a dad, the person that I saw who made this, his YouTube is called Diego Footer.
Oh
And he's
yeah, I know. I've seen it.
really good. Yeah. So go check out that video. It's like easy compost, and then you'll just see a trash bin and then him putting in some material. And he even says, "Oh, I'm a dad. I don't have a lot of time. I also want my kids to be involved with the garden. I want something that my kids can use." Boom. Got some food scraps. Oh, here's some carbon. There you go. Whenever you start seeing more nitrogen material, okay, you're better off throwing some carbon on there. I like the 30-to-1 ratio. Some people like more. I've seen a lot of good results with the 30-to-1.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm finding interesting now is I've started to tear down the whole, well, all the chilies are now out of the greenhouse. They've all been torn down. And so I'm probably at a similar stage to where like Lefty is in terms of, okay, I've got the raised beds. My raised beds are substantially smaller than Lefty. But, I've got chilies that have been growing indoors as well, that have loads of cocoa that have come out from them. And now you have all the leaves that are falling off the trees. And I've actually gone around and collected a whole stack of leaves, but they're not green leaves, they're all brown leaves that have fallen off the trees. Collected a whole stack of those, tilled them into the top layer at least of the raised beds. I've taken cocoa from the indoor chili grow that gets emptied out on top of that mush leaf pile, and then I've poured in lots of Canazyme is what I've been using, watering that in just to help break it all down and like getting it prepared for next year and starting that whole breakdown process, give it some time to prep itself. And because the reality is actually, like next year starts in the outdoor season in a greenhouse, 4 months time. That's when
Already
you
started.
can start.
Yeah,
depending on where you are in the world. I mean, like we're at least
people
at
are
this
popping in
latitude.
December.
Yeah, I mean, like this latitude, end of February, you're going to start planting in the greenhouse. You can germinate indoor now. It's ready to go late February. It's almost hardened. Especially if you live out, like if you're living in Europe, growing stuff and hardening it off in like a conservatory. If you've got it, it's not quite outdoors yet, but it's like halfway between outdoors and the greenhouse, and then the greenhouse is quite a good next step. Unless you have a double glazed greenhouse, then fair play. But I don't think many people have got double glazed greenhouses.
That's the dream, huh?
That is a dream. Yeah, it would be nice. Orangery off the side of the house. That's what I'd like. You could just walk off the back of the house into the greenhouse.
Yeah,
I think that's the
I'd like to
clue.
live in
Make
a
the house the
greenhouse.
greenhouse.
Yeah. See.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking
I've
into
seen
that.
one
Actually,
where was it?
the-
Is it
in Sweden they have one. That's the house inside.
Yeah,
But,
it's the house inside
yeah.
the greenhouse.
I
Yeah.
looked at Kirsten Dirksen.
There's one in Holland that's done something similar where they did half, I think it's half of the house is a greenhouse, and it's built in like the house is like the whole structure, but the half of it's designed to be a greenhouse. And yeah, they're like the catches in the middle of summer. You're like, hang on, it's got to shield some of this shit. Starts to get a bit too warm in the middle of summer.
Well, that's just it. You could put something to climb up against, or I mean, just or even have a tree. I like vines for this method, but have it grow up and block out all the sun during the summer and then have it be something that's deciduous. So the leaves would fall once it's done, and then in comes the light. I like
Or you
I
just
like
have
that.
like a light depth.
You can have light depth too. Yeah, you could go the green route. You could go, even more.
Well, you want to go like the
controlled,
totally
blacking it
high
out.
tech route. I mean, this is where you want to go the totally high tech route because you get glass panels that when you
Yeah, or just press a
apply,
button, boom.
and they black out straight away. They actually have that. You can switch them on and off, so to speak. I mean, they're expensive. I mean, to have a greenhouse, it was fitted with those, so you didn't have to
Yeah.
be dragged. But I mean,
Well,
how?
so is a double pane greenhouse. So look at
Well, how
how
many
easy
times?
that-
Because the cool thing about those ones where you can either go completely black or shaded, you can do degrees of opacity, essentially. You can actually scale it up and down. It doesn't have to be on or off, it can be a degree in between. And then you would start to think, well, how much if I want to do light depth with
You'd be
a
better off building
shade
a damn
cloth,
warehouse.
how much is that going to be?
You'd be better off building the warehouse.
You reckon?
I mean,
I've seen
by
them-
the
So I
time
I've
can
you
do
seen
do
them
it-
light depth without
models.
paying for electricity. If I wanted to do it on like close to the equator, so I don't want to pay for electricity.
yeah,
the
but you
problem
are
is
because
I never
you gotta
have.
cool it. You gotta cool it at some point. You gotta exhaust it at some point. Unless you're loading that thing up with solar panels, it's gonna take power. So I mean,
Well,
at
just
some
need
point,
fans to just exhaust fans, which is a lot lower than lighting costs. If you think
yeah, no,
about,
it wouldn't
I
be a
just have to
problem where I'm
suck
at.
air out and circulate the air to keep the humidity down.
you want to
That
know
could
how
run
much it
all
costs to
power
run
on
my
solar.
fans a month?
Compared to running your lights, yeah, I'd like to know how much it would be to run your fans.
Them two greenhouse fans are more than my fucking lights a month. I tell you that.
What is your fans, bro? Jesus.
Those are running at 230 volts. Okay, so I'm already lowering the ampage on those. And
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
But
no,
the- but
my
the two-
electric bill out
220
there at that greenhouse is 150 a month for the greenhouse,
Okay,
and that's just fans,
but
And you
250.
can't do solar or wind.
Oh, I can, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
But if you were to, okay, but so how much would it cost? I mean, we're just kicking tires here. I mean, this is spitballing ideas. But if you had a greenhouse that was fitted, I mean, I'm looking like over the lifespan of say 10, 15 years. If you had a greenhouse that had panels where it would just black the whole greenhouse out, boop, done. You're not relying on any lighting because the whole reason why you're doing light depth is because you live in an environment where it's always around, enough to always keep it going, like 14 hours of daylight, and then occasionally it dips to 12. You know what I mean? If you're close to the equator, and if
Yeah,
you
but
weren't close to the equator, you'd only have to touch it up a little bit.
Right, but you don't.
And
need
then
light.
you have. No, like the minimum would ever hit it's okay. Well, like when you live in certain parts, do you know what I mean? Fuck's sake.
I mean, you need. Well, I mean, we're talking apples to apples. I mean, you need light depth in northern parts. In the northern.
Yeah, if I wanted to do
hemisphere
three grows a season
right.
in northern hemisphere, I want to be able to do light depth from April onwards, pretty much. If I could run 12-12 from April onwards and have somewhere that's just producing clones indoors that go to outdoor 12-12 where I don't pay for that lighting, and I can grow thousands of clones in a very small space compared to when I'm flowering them out. I need a much bigger space to do that. So the cost of lighting that large environment is much greater than a small little, relatively speaking.
Yeah, you could
And
light
then-
the stuff up when you initiate flowering just for like 2 weeks to get the extra veg period.
Or you don't light depth for the extra 3 weeks, and then as soon as they've gone, you just then start doing 12-12-12-12. That's what I mean. You can just cut it. And you think the cost of running HPS or LEDs on that scale, on like acreage green or hectareage greenhouses.
Yeah, but
and
you
then
don't-
you
you
go,
barely
how
use
do
any
you
lights.
light depth? How do you light depth acreages? You'd have to pull huge amounts of, blackout shielding over everything, that becomes impractical. So then at that point you start thinking, well, actually, the cost of panels that black out for me over, the real catch is they're an upfront hell of an expense to pay upfront, but over the next 20 years or 30 years you never replace them, and suddenly I paid 100,000 30 years ago to build this, and it hasn't cost me a
Expenses that
fucking
would've
thing
added
since
up.
then.
Yeah, you start
And
spending double.
that's the catch, is it's when you have to look at it in terms of amortization over 15, 20, 30 years. That's what you're investing in now, is that I don't have to pay anything for the next 30 years. Then it's very cost effective to do.
Could I share something, Pete?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Nope. No sharing today.
Back
It's no
off.
share Saturday.
Hopefully this is coming up. I like what you were saying, Lefty, with the fans. Like, what the fuck? I would have to let I need airflow. Of course, this overall theme of like all the issues we've been talking about over the last couple months. But yeah, what I like about this system, it's underground tubing. Here we go with some more tubing narration. This would be, again, cost is a big thing here, but it would take care of
To store the
issue
heat,
you're
right?
talking about. It's a climate battery. So yeah, you're just
Yeah.
storing the heat, and you're storing
And then you're pulling it back at night.
and then you're pulling it, exactly. And then you could run a fan that's solar powered, or whatever regenerative method of electricity, and then you're just cycling everything, and it's all being taken care of there. So this is
Yeah, I
where
mean,
you're
it's like
showing up.
those thermal, geothermal
Yeah, this is it.
batteries.
Geothermal.
Yeah.
It's called many different
Yeah.
things. Geothermal, climate battery. It's all the same thing.
It's a
But
little
yeah,
tricky when you're on the 8th floor of a high-rise apartment to fit your
yeah.
I think it
Definitely
depends,
have
like
to be the right, method for the right
you
setup.
You have to go knock on
think you have
everybody's,
like
excuse me, mate, you mind if I just drill through? I'm coming through from the 8th floor.
I think you got separate systems, the ones that take all the hot air out and store it, and then you have like a medium around where the pipe is that kind of conserves the heat, and then you have other systems where you're kind of pulling it through, and you're getting like the ground temperature to become like the stable temperature.
Yeah. This would be your battery for
Yeah.
in the summer when you want things to cool down. It's cooler down here, and in the winter when you want things to warm up, things are warmer down here. This is an
I saw one where
insulated material.
they buried it about
It's geothermal.
5 meters or so down. I mean, they had to go fairly deep I guess it also depends
they
where
do.
you are. The further north you are, the deeper you've got to go down. And well, the further north or south you are, the deeper you've got to go down, essentially. To hit that constant temperature. But what they then did is they filled this huge thing with powdered glass. They just took loads of glass bottles and stuck them in an ultrasound machine that the ultrasound just shattered it all into like a glass powder, and they could pull out I mean, it was amazing to watch, because when they just bundle all the glass bottles in, switch it on, it's finished, it's glass powder, and they just pull all the labels out of the glass powder. I mean, it's really, really insane. And then they fill this thing with glass powder, and then just ran.
That keeps the heat, right?
Yeah. The glass powder really holds onto the heat really well. They buried this whole thing 5 meters underground, and they just had tubes running, Perspex tubes running out from that back up into the greenhouse, and just out like air vents coming out on the floor in the greenhouse. And in the summer it keeps it cool, in the winter it keeps it warm. It's
keeps it
stable.
stable.
They do that on some of the big greenhouses in the States too, and then they just use dehumidifiers, and they have like the whole greenhouse is closed, and they put everything down in the ground for temperature control.
And those you can run off of a sustainable way to collect energy as well. So yeah,
well, they're free to run. I mean, they don't. Yeah, that's their beauty. I mean,
oh no, I was saying with the dehumidifiers, if that's an issue, like you have a lot of humidity in your air, if that's the one underlying thing that's the biggest issue in all of this, and a lot of other greenhouse systems, you have way more compounded things working against you. The heat, how much airflow, and the humidity. So
And then you
Yeah,
have
it-
something called the Volapini. That is a greenhouse
Yeah.
that's built sunk into the ground, where you also get the benefit of a stable temperature from the ground. So
Yeah.
I think
You're
that's
actually
something that's
putting the building itself, or
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, GMF, how's it going, bud?
Can't complain. Feet above ground. Just a little tardy to the party, guys. Sorry about that.
No, man, all good, all good. Yeah, yeah. No, the other thing we were discussing beforehand is how, yeah, I was saying like, like there's this 8,000 plus genomes available on public resource. It's incredible to see.
But it's not all aggregated together anywhere, huh?
No. It's just the raw information, the raw data is there. So
Yeah,
I mean,
and
it's
so-
there for anybody to pull it down and organize it into sensible, what makes sense and link it all together. Which
So
is
would-
kind of what Farnos said all along. Is like, look, here's the data. You can do what we've done. Here it is. You just got to go ahead and do it, though. Hence, in there lies the problem. It's like, okay, there's a lot of this to go through.
Well, and you're trying to make a system by which we can query that data, correct? We can pose it questions and try to get some sort of semblance of order to it.
Yeah, to be able to go in and ask it questions like, well, the idea is to be able to bring in data from all the different locations, which goes with the whole, what are you smoking on now? Fill out the flavor form, because that is another source of information that we can link into. If everybody's filling out what they believe to be their, well, not what they believe, that's the wrong way of putting it, but what people see as being the flavor profile that they get for everybody in the crowd who's smoking OG Kush on this show, on the next show, on the next show. If we all start asking the question and get people to fill out the form, then you've got 9,000 people who fill out saying OG Kush has this flavor profile, and there's going to be outliers in that group but there's going to be a section of it that everybody agrees on, and you go, all right, well, that's what fits that profile then. And then you look at the other ones that fit the other profile. But at the same time, now the beauty is you can also pull in the genetic profile, and you can now associate these flavors with this genome fingerprint and go, okay, well, every time, then pick everything that has that same flavor profile and subtract the genomes from each other, leaving behind only the common genes,
So
or
we
the
can
common
find all the
base
deep
pairs.
fakes.
True. Yeah. But what you would be left with is, this is what's common at the very end of it. If I could get like 20 different strains that all say they have a, pine, for argument's sake, pine smell, and then you subtract it. And the way it works is you subtract one from each other, and where the resultant of the two, because you assign, there's only 4 letters, and you assign a value to each one of those letters in the genome, and then you say subtract one from the other, and where they subtracting one matrix from the other matrix, but the results are 0, those are where they match each other exactly. Anything else that's not 0 means they weren't a perfect match. So that leaves you with this perfect, okay, that's their bit. And then you take the next one, you do the same thing over and over and over again on that same set of genomes, and you're suddenly left with this filtered down bit that's what's common across all of these, and they have this common terpene profile. So this cluster of, this cluster of genomes or base pairs would hint towards this being the kind of terpene profile you're likely to get.
And
Right,
could you
you're creating
verify that?
corollary data, not causation data. Okay.
Yeah, correlation. Yeah.
So could you verify that, like, certain cultivars had the background that they were supposed to have, and then
Yeah, you
find
could.
out
Yeah, absolutely.
what stuff didn't have the right background, so you could kind of take away all the stuff that this isn't matching up somehow, you know, and you could make like a list of what is
Yeah.
confirmed and not confirmed.
Yeah, no, precisely. I mean, you start to get to how close is this to this genetically, and then how close is it to it in terms of its lineage? And that's really
Yeah.
interesting because you see these pairs that come up saying this is genetically really similar to this one. In one database, you've got these two are really close to each other. And then you look at using EU Seed Finder as an example, they're distantly related, though. They're not by any means closely related to each other. They share very distant common heritage, but for some reason, the two of them have come out being very, very similar. Now, that's either because somebody, it's two different cuts that have suddenly turned up and got named differently. Yeah, that's what's really, if somebody was to say, I've got something called OG Kush, you go, all right, well, let's compare it to the one strain that almost everything backs up towards to say, this is the OG. I mean, but that's the problem. I can tell you from EU Seed Finder as an example that of all the OG Kush cuts, this is the one that everything stems from. There's 15 different cuts of it that kick about, but the most influential cut is this one. It has the broad, everything spawns on from there.
But you could also see the stuff that's
somebody
supposed to have
go it. To you. What you would need is somebody to go, I have that original one. Here it is, and here's the genome for it.
But
or you need a whole bunch along the way.
Wouldn't the correlation between like all the new genetics that's supposed to have that be able to have like some line back to the original one?
But you still need the sample of the original. I mean, the catch is, unless you can give me a sample of the original, I can tell you that these two are really closely related. So I might be able to say, like, this group that you bring forward are all 98%
like,
or 95% similar.
And you can say it's not this and this.
Yeah, you have, it's highly unlikely to be this and it's highly unlikely to be that. I'm sorry to be giving it like, in the world of science, it's highly unlikely. It would never be, it's definitely not. It's highly unlikely that it's this.
Yeah, like when they do genetic tests on stuff from crime cases and stuff, and they like, it's 95% chance it's a guy from your family.
Exactly. It's all based on percentage similarity. It shares 95%, and the chances of something else sharing 95% of it's 1 in like 3 billion.
Yeah, so it could be like an uncle or a grandfather or something closely related, but you can at least say if it's not that, you're not going to be able to say that you're.
Yeah. The one thing you'll be able to say with absolute confidence is it's not a cut, or it is a cut. Because if it's a cut, it's 100% match. There's no ifs, ands, or ups. It matches it. Boom, 100%. There you go. You got a cut. There's no variation.
That's really interesting
in the base pair.
Especially if you can start to get stuff verified, so you can like, there's a high probability that this is what it is.
Yeah, and I'm surprised people aren't. Maybe this is a danger at a public forum, but to say something like, I'm surprised people aren't going, hang on, these 8,000 genomes have been sequenced. When we know which genome it was that got sequenced, so we know which one to sequence if I want to compare, your sample with this central database. I don't have to do the comparison of the original one again. You can send me a sample. I've just got to do yours. I've just got to get your data, and I can instantly compare it to a central database and go, it's really close to all of these, or it's very distant from all of these. I can do that straight away. I don't have to go out there and actually collect 8,000 myself. I might have to do Well, one would probably, a company would maybe have to do like, there might be 3 or 4 genes you might have to look at potentially, because each of the ones that are out there might be slightly different ones that have been sequenced. But so long as you know which one it is, you know which one to compare it with. Yeah. The
That'd be a
past
really
it
cool
is, it's
service.
$400 to get a gene sequence. You know, that's not cheap.
Yeah, no, but if people could send it in to you after they have it sequenced, and then they could get like a reward if they contribute with value, so you get more valuable data. That would be a good way to do it.
You were
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
quoted 400? Is that where you were getting quoted
Looking online, yeah, it's about 400 to do a full sequence.
for cannabis specifically though?
Yeah.
Because it can be done for a quarter of that for just any other plant. So
I was looking at
there
medical
looks-
genomics or media genomics, whatever they call themselves.
uh-huh.
There, I think it was $400 was like the one
Yeah,
where,
it shouldn't cost more than like $100. Like it's pretty,
yeah.
but it also depends on
That
what you're
also
doing,
includes
on the
being able
method.
to download the data and
Yeah,
everything else
yeah.
that goes with it. So,
You know, and you're looking at what they've collected as well, their archives. So then I could understand at least double, but yeah, they are price marking up. It's a new technology that, I mean, new to what we're doing, but not new in general to agriculture. And agriculture, that's why I said it's should be like $100. I was just listening to a citrus. I'm part of the California Rare Fruit Growers, and on Thursday we had a meeting with I remember his full name, but he's been studying and categorizing different citruses, and there's just been a boom of citrus breeding in the last couple of decades. So there's a lot of stuff that has been marked down and said, okay, I own this. This company, you know, was is the one that was in charge of the breeding project for that. And he's just been putting together all this stuff. So that's where I heard it. He one of the questions was like, oh, I have some apples. I have some varieties of apples. I want to know, you know, what they are. How much is it for me to figure that out? And I believe he quoted like 100. Yeah, I shouldn't have recorded that, but I did it for my own purposes. I'm not sharing that. So that's why, yeah, I paid my dues to the club, you know, they can handle it. But yeah, that's why I quoted that. I quoted 100. I was like, well, there's no difference. They're both fucking plants. They're both living organisms. But with what you're saying is full access to the archive. You can download everything, and you can even talk to them if you see any discrepancies. There's someone to talk to. It's not just you on your own. So with a little bit more income, you know, being
yeah, I guess
put
if you're
in,
actually, I mean, if you're
guess,
doing
yeah.
it seriously and which would be nice. I mean, you know, it's one of those, you go, the resource is absolutely worth it to understand off the bat whether or not I should be playing around with these or not. The amount of time it can save you is just, you know, the $400 it costs
Yeah,
you to get
well,
it done.
if you wouldn't have
terms of
done
a
that, it would
time
cost you
saver.
1,000 in the
Mm.
long run per plant. You know,
Yeah,
with all
yeah,
the
I
other
mean-
expenses and time and effort and your life, man. Some people, not everyone wants to be in this forever. You know, not everyone wants to like do this all the fucking time. Some people have families. Some people
Mm.
have lives. Some people have other hobbies that take it up. So yeah, if you put that into perspective, it's worth a little bit more.
Some people have dogs, Lefty.
Yeah, they eventually got to be fed.
But yeah, that's it. 'Cause I mean, and I'd like to think it's going to get cheaper. But what I also like to think is that, yeah, you know, the ability to crowdsource the information, but then to also make the information freely available back to the crowd. I like to. It should be on a give to get basis. If you contribute data into it, you get to use the data out of the system. If you just want to use the data and you don't want to contribute data, then you pay for it. And that's the way it works. If
You're
that's a give to
contributing
get.
no matter what.
Yeah,
That's how
exactly.
Pete made his first blockchain.
Bitcoin.
Well,
Yeah, peak
this
points
is all
coming up.
predicated, I think, on the idea that someone's got to have an intention. They have to already know some idea of where they want to go, what they're trying to do. And I think very, very few have really had that till now. Because a lot of us, you're just stumbling around in the dark, combining things, waiting to see what happens, and hoping you get somewhere good, making assumptions on observable traits. So this may be a whole new different approach, because oftentimes, as we all know, A plus B doesn't make C. 1 plus 2 sometimes is 4.
Oh, and in finance, it definitely is. It's what two numbers do you want to add together, and what outcome do you want? Cool.
Yeah.
I'll make that happen. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I think this is the power of where we are now in terms of the information age and the data that's out there. Is I just did a few cursory sort of tests to see what happens if I pick a plant and say, well, what is its flowering time, as in the end of a lineage, and go, give me the average flowering time of everything that contributed to this one plant, where the average flowering time is known of the previous lineage. And it comes in, when you put in standard deviation, if there's more than about 10 plants, I would say, in the lineage, the final result is really close to this is what you can expect to get in the outcome. It's creepy how accurate it's stuff. So it could really give people a good indication of, I want something that flowers within 60 days. Show me what I need to be working with. I want this terpene profile. Show me what I have to have in the lineage. Otherwise, I'm just never going to get this. No matter what I do, it's never going to turn up. There's a number of those questions that can be answered without having to do really expensive tests, thanks to the wealth of information that's out there and all that data. And hopefully that's where we're moving on to. We're moving on from just let me fling A into B and see what I get. And it's becoming a little bit more, hang on, I kind of know what I'm trying to do. Let me go and find what I need to actually hit that end goal. I think it's becoming a little bit more directed. Maybe, the whole thing's moved on so much more that now to the point where people can be a little bit more specific in what they're trying to achieve. Even if you're a newcomer to the game, you've got access to resources that say, you need to have something that's got this in its history if you want to have earthy terpenes, or you want to piney terpenes, you're going to have this somewhere in the lineage. So only look at strains that have that. We'll try and find specifically, that landrace strain that was originally used, where all of this comes from.
Yeah, and especially if we are going to get more into, looking at terpenes and flavonoids, more of like targeted medicine, actual medicine for people like that have specific issues and they need it to be dealt with. Yeah,
I think what you're looking to breed for then is specific chemotypes, which is what it's going to come down to. Whether it's medicinal, whether it's recreational. I personally find the distinguishing line is it's the same. It's all the intention of how you're using it. Whiskey is medicinal or recreational, depending on how you use it. So what makes a medicinal strain as a recreational strain it just comes down to how you're using it at the end of the day, is my personal opinion. I'm
Yeah,
open to having that change, but high THC for one person's medicinal, high THC for somebody else's recreation. It's the same plant, two different purposes.
Well,
yeah.
I'm going to bring up another bone that may kind of cause some trouble, but could this in some way help us put an end to the sativa indica debate? Could you potentially be using this data setting to put some of these, I don't want to say like old archaic terms, but that's kind of what they are. Could you put some of these terms to bed finally?
Oh, excuse me.
Sorry to catch you, Pete. You okay?
What would you like to think, sir? That they could at least show that they all have like a common heritage. But that it's a real, I mean, even while I'm trying to build this data set out, what the biggest challenge I find is stuff is still categorized as being it's indica, it's sativa, it's indica sativa hybrid. It's indica sativa ruderalis hybrid. Now, there is definitely sativa and ruderalis. Now, ruderalis is in its own right. That sits in its own category. It's completely different in how it behaves to sativa, cannabis sativa, and cannabis sativa covering both the indica and what we classify. Okay, so cannabis sativa being cultivated cannabis, which is everything we're growing. Ruderalis is its own line. It doesn't behave the same way, just purely on the fact that it is not it is a short day flowering strain. No, it's not a short day flowering strain. What am I saying? All normal cannabis sativa is a short day flowering, meaning
scototropic. Ruderalis is non-scototropic.
Exactly. It works on maturity of plant. Doesn't matter what you do to it. When it hits this maturity, it will flower.
So is there any way, so the data set will define those two apart, but is there any way we can use the data set to try to find some way to say, okay, anything with this particular genetic, because, all sativas, or what is it, all indicas are sativas, but not all sativas are indicas, because we're saying indica is a subset of all the cultivated. Well then, okay, is there a way we're going to be able to pick this apart?
I've heard Sam Skunkman said that Robert Connell Clark preferred to call it by narrow leaf and wide leaf.
Well, to call it, by its description, just call it what it is. It's, plants are described by what kind of structure are you looking for? Okay, this group of plants fits into this structure. Now you're looking for narcotic effect. All right, well, these group of plants will fit that structure and this narcotic effect. Or
I think most of the really narrow leaf plants are quite stretchy, though. I don't think there's many really narrow leaf, not stretchy varieties.
Define.
Like, it
but then the
depends
thing
what
is,
you
what's
define
called
like narrow.
But what's narrow leaf? Yeah, exactly. I mean,
yeah.
I've seen narrow leaf plants that are not stretchy at all, but they're relative to a Afghan Kush and a tropical strain. So, Afghan versus Durban poison, but Durban poison versus a Thai plant. The Thai plant's got seriously narrow little leaves, for instance, and the Durban poison is broader than that. And then the
so maybe the definition of how broad and how narrow the leaves are before they almost change like the morphology.
I think it's better described by the latitude that it comes from, because that's the defining bit. It comes from this latitude. If it's within this latitude, it tends to have this
there's
structure.
No genetic marker we're going to find that sets it off instead.
No, okay. I don't think there is. I don't think there is at all.
Okay.
I think you'll find genetic markers that indicate whether it's heavily narcotic or not, which would be your hemp varieties versus your narcotic varieties. And then the narcotic varieties. Yeah, I mean, that's the distinguisher between narcotic or non-narcotic. That's really the two. That's the baseline. So your hemp and your non-hemp strains. Hemp being non-narcotic, and everything else that has a psychotropic or some kind of narcotic effect to it. And there you suddenly, and then you'll go by structure, and that structure is determined by where it comes from in terms of geography. So is it coming from the tropics? If it is, it will have this look and structure to it. If it's coming from further north or south of those tropics, it's certainly going to become broadleaf. It's going to be, yeah, they'll exhibit similar, and they're going to flower in shorter time frame. They're used to having a shorter period to flower in. And that's all that happened with Ruderalis. It just you've got no time to flower, so you have to flower from the word go. You know, at some point that genetic deviation occurred.
But what about after hybridization starts? Then it becomes more.
But
It's
then, you
almost
know,
like you
you'd say,
need
I'm looking
certain
for it, but
traits.
how would you but then you just call the plant as how you would describe it. It's not sativa, it's not indica, it's a broadleaf, stretchy plant that's really narcotic. It's probably the better description than it's a sativa
Oh, yeah,
indica
no.
hybrid. Like, what the fuck does that mean? You know, what on earth does it
Oh,
actually
yeah, no,
mean?
that's like the most confusing term ever, especially when they start to put percentages in there.
Yeah.
Because
And
I've
I
always
see
been like,
strains,
how are
even
they
in like
getting these percentages?
yeah, even in the EUC part, what's crazy is you look at how stuff is classified in that database, and you'll see things that started off where both parents were, the heritage is indica, you know, what they classify as indica, but somehow this strain has come out as 100% sativa, and you go, but how is that possible? You know, it's like, you know, it just doesn't make sense. So you're not, the classification, that classification method is broken completely
Oh,
and
yeah.
utterly.
I mean, we got to find a way to put that to bed somehow.
Yeah, there has to be a way of doing it.
I was hoping your data would provide that path.
Well, I think the data does, because it just goes, there's no fucking difference.
Well, yeah,
There
there's
really isn't.
that, and then it's just gonna be like compost. It just needs time. We need those people and those ideas, those people with those ideas to die out.
Dinosaur's got a dinosaur.
Yeah, yeah. And then I hear the younger generation keep on using it and just kind of got to harp on them too. Like, hey, you're fucking using that wrong.
Or is the term like sativa really something that doesn't exist anymore because it's been hybridized?
Yeah,
Well,
it's all
sativa exists. The
same now.
hybridization is the same as sativa, just means cultivated. So hybrids are cultivated strains. So
Yeah, no, but
Indica
what
you know,
people were
it's
considering as
India.
sativa, what people were considering like a sativa from when I remember starting to buy seeds, I remember like it was like those really tall, super narrow leaves.
all
Those
the
were like
tropical plants.
true sativas.
Mm.
That's what people were like saying. That's a true sativa. And when
Yeah,
people would
tropical.
come with like something that was like 1 meter tall, and they were saying, "Oh, this is sativa, man. It has that sativa effect." Most were like, "It's a hybrid," you know.
But this is the thing where the definition, the actual definition of the term has been misused, because
Oh, absolutely.
you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but the definition of cannabis sativa is a cultivated lineage. It doesn't matter whether it's a hybrid or not. It does that doesn't come into play. It's the fact that it's cultivated. You've actively bred this for whatever purpose you're trying to breed it for. And bearing in mind, and the fact that underneath that umbrella of it's all cannabis sativa, there is no such thing as a hybrid, because there isn't indica and sativa. It's all sativa.
Yeah, no, I just think I don't think that was really the big discussion when it was a pure black market. I think it was like the books, you know, even was hard to get, and people were kind of using what they had in the grow books that were published. So that was the only reason for that language to really show up, because like if you read any book probably up till now, they still call it that.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely. And then it's a big, it's a huge challenge. And like, how do you change the groundswell? How do you? I mean, it has to happen at the roots level. That
Mm.
change, and it has to bubble up from the bottom upwards. Actually, not from top down. This has to bubble upwards because you've already got scientific white papers and documentation that refers to these two because of the fact that it's been illegal to study it. So the only people who've written shit about it have genuinely been from the community, if that makes any sense. And so you have
Mm.
community terminology being bandied around, and you suddenly start to it's not going to happen. We, the consumer, have to change, not the producer. We will change the market, the terminology being used as the consumer. It's my belief.
Okay, that's why I think it has to be something clear and visual that people can almost like identify
So
immediately.
go for latitude. Go for how tropical is this? What's the it's a mixture of northern latitudes and southern latitude. Okay, great, excellent.
We're, you know, the issue we're having is the same issue that we were having at the beginning of the fucking Renaissance, when we had all these plants and all these people were calling different plants the same thing. So yeah, and what did they use? They used descriptions on where it was found, what it smells like, what it looks like, things like that. So you're dead on with, hey, we need to use descriptions. We need to use what it is to describe what it is. Just something that we're having a green renaissance right now within our own community. Hey, we weren't talking about genetics as much before. And whoever was bleeding edge and was actually trying to do more with what they had. Shouldn't say it wasn't a conversation at all. It was a rare conversation. It's also like we had our own little pockets of understanding too. Everyone was disconnected. Now we're just, again, the green renaissance. We're interconnecting everything. We're interconnecting the people from the West Coast to the East Coast. We're interconnecting the people from Canada to, you know, all of North America, to South America. Same thing to Europe and to Africa now. So it's just like I said, it's just a matter of time.
And it's good to see that the conversation point is coming up. I mean, we're seeing it pop up on more and more of the channels. So maybe it is starting to happen that you know, the groundswell, if everybody stops and agrees that from now on we will describe things by their appearance and their effect rather than some arbitrary term that doesn't really mean anything, then we're on, you know, potentially onto a good thing. We might get there in the end.
Yeah, Bill Nye is always, if you know, looking at what he talks about pedagogy, literally the teaching of science, it comes down to discipline and vocabulary. Just literally teaching new people the correct terminology and making sure you yourself do not fall into using that, you know, former terminology. Find a new terminology and stick with it. Teach it and stick with it.
Yeah. I mean,
we've been
and that's
using Latin since the Renaissance. Boom.
And then I've seen, you know, and I don't know, makes me feel a little proud maybe to see it happen. I have seen people switching from using BX to BC. I've seen it, and that warms the cockles of my heart to go, okay, cool. You know, little bits at a time, it'll chip away, and eventually it'll happen. You know,
it adds up.
You know, if we have to accept, maybe I'll go down that route.
Everything changes through baby steps, man, and it's about, you know, it's literally water against the stone. It's about applying pressure over time, and that's, I think, the important part of teaching new people the correct way. Whenever you get someone new, take the time to really teach them and to actually be invested in the fact that they get a good set of foundations. And it doesn't matter if you're teaching them growing, teaching them cooking, teaching them whatever. Make sure they get a good set of basics and a good bullshit meter, because those two things will take you far.
No, precisely.
And it's also, you know, not just teaching people new. Yeah, that's great. That's how it should be. We need to build a foundation, but also educating people that have been around for a while. And they say, well, I just call it, you know, indica sativa, because that's what I use. Like, okay, why are you using that? Does it really describe what you're going after? Like, does it really describe all these things? No. And where did you, like, how did you first start using this? Why did you first start using this? And kind of just bring open to light, like, the fraying parts of just why they're doing all these things. Like, it's very shaky on all their descriptions of why they're doing. It's like, well, if you use it this way, if you use these descriptions, everyone's going to know what you're talking about. Instead of like,
we'll get there. Slowly but surely, one plant at a time, we'll make it there. But having a look at the time, on that note, that brings us up to just over an hour.
Over an hour. I think
if
we're
you'd like
good
to-
on the,
Cheers.
jumping
Yeah.
in. Are we doing something after? Because we kind
Yeah,
of
if people want to jump in for a little bit of an after show, I'll post the link now. But in the meantime, where can everybody find you, Lefty?
Lefty's Farm on Instagram and Cannabuzz. Man, I got to get on Cannabuzz. I haven't been on there in a long time. But yeah, around here usually on Saturdays, hanging
But
out
the
at the farm
rapper,
with puppy.
Cannabis.
Cannabuzz. Hop on, check it out. Simple
Good,
Seed
good,
Co.
good.
Check
And
it
the
out.
Simple Seed Co. Yes, of course. Hang on a second. Let me grab the link. Forgetting to promote it. I'm terrible at this stuff.
Banana OG Arise is kicking ass.
There we go. 90% germination rate on the number 6s so far from Supreme Grape which is pretty good. I think that's a good go. I need to see if I can persuade the Mystery Grower to release this stuff out to the rest of the world as well, rather than just Europe. Actually, I think Europe's becoming a bit of a pain in the ass to deal with. They really are.
Tell him if he can get him over to me, I'll get him out for him stateside.
It'd be interesting
Excellent.
to get the Mystery Growers take on Brexit eventually. See how that helps out a seed.
I can tell you what their opinion is.
Heathen IT.
Fucking suck. Yeah. I mean, I'll speak as Peel Grow Systems, and I'm not selling products to Europe anymore. It's just not worth the hassle. They get caught up in customs and just held there for no apparent reason whatsoever. It's just like, nah, probably asked. It's actually become cheaper to sell to everywhere but Europe.
I'm sorry to hear that,
Which is
man.
really interesting.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. But yeah, Raptor, where can we find you, sir?
sure thing. Thanks for inviting me, Pete. Had a great conversation with everyone here. I'm Raptor Grow. You can find me on Instagram, Raptor Grow. Same thing with YouTube, typically in the chats around with most of the community videos are out there. Yeah, you could also find me on the Neighborhood Growers show on Tuesday. No, sorry. I don't know why I said Tuesdays. Mondays, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 Eastern.
Tuesday in Europe.
Tuesday in Europe, yeah, exactly.
Tuesday in Europe, there you go, yeah.
So you were fine. Yeah. Magma, where can everybody find you, buddy?
But they can find me here on Saturdays and on IG.
Cool. That's at Magma Seeds on IG. And GMF, where can everybody find you, sir?
And man, when I figure out where I'm at, I'll let you know.
Good man.
Yeah.
And on that
Follow
note,
me on IG if I can be helpful. Yeah.
everybody stay safe, and we shall catch you all next week. Have a good one, and jump in
Get
for the
vaccinated.
after show.